What do you think, I suppose on a more serious note or somber note, what do you think the hardest thing about being a teacher is?
I think it's a real emotional roller coaster. I think every day you can feel like you've been pummeled, even if you're in a great school where everything is working really well.
Yeah.
Just because you're constantly spinning plates and you're dealing with people, children, and it's not even people, you're dealing with children.
Yeah.
And children there's a wide range of emotions constantly throughout the day from the kids. Some are angry, some are happy, some are, feeling sad because something's happened at home, whatever, various reasons. And you're having to manage that with so many of them all of the time. I also think that if you're a really committed teacher who wants to change the lives of the kids that you're with, you give everything, you give everything in a way that you might not do if you're working for McKinsey. At the end of the day, well, some client doesn't get something perfect, who cares? Whereas with these kids, it's their lives that you have in the palm of your hands, and you're trying to help them make something of that life. And so you invest a lot of yourself. And I know teachers often will say, when they're outside of school, I don't just mean here, I mean all teachers I know, they on the weekend they're looking at things. Oh, I could use that for my class. Oh, this would be a good idea for them. And
it's an investment.
You're just always invested. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Teachers leave because of crazy behavior. That is the number one reason. Not leaving because of Michael Gove. I mean, it's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Teachers leave because of workload and because of behavior. That is why, right? And that has nothing to do with Michael Gove or the Conservatives or the Labour Party or anybody. It's where teaching has been for some time. And it's not to do with any political party. It is to do with a culture in our society which allows for excuses. And we just need to raise our standards as a profession. And that's not to do with political parties. We need to take responsibility on that.
I mean, if I use the phrase authentic teacher wellbeing,
yeah,
or genuine teacher wellbeing,
yeah,
what does that mean to you, and how does that translate into practice?
So in terms of culture, I think it's about the day-to-day practice of how people care for, speak to and look after each other, as much as it's about the things like, and we do all those extra things like additional PPA cover, people can take additional time off. We're always trying to accommodate people's personal lives and be flexible around that. But it's, for me, the day-to-day conduct as well. And there is a real understanding of right-mindedness here, and the way to speak to people, the way to support people, the way to treat people, that makes it have that kind of, it's got a very relaxed feel.
And is that a personnel thing, or is that a culture that you've actually tried to embed somehow?
Yeah, I think probably both. I think I'm quite non-hierarchical in my leadership style, and I think there is that kind of sense of open friendliness and kind of collaborative work across the school because of that.
What do you think is the hardest part about being a teacher or a head teacher?
I mean, there's, being a head, there are many challenges. There are huge challenges. I think actually one of the hardest part for me is the public face that you have to present all the time. So I live quite close to where I work, and you are on duty all the time. I can't be seen, I don't feel, professional, but it's professional duty and responsibility that I am the head teacher of a local primary school. You just have to be really careful all the time, and that I feel sad about that, because I don't think people, I am authentic, and people see what you see is what you get with me, and parents know that.
Yeah.
But I can't go out and get drunk in the local pub, because I can't do that, and so your life becomes quite closed down because of it. I mean, that's the personal side of it, and that is impactful, and I don't think people necessarily think about that about you. When I've been to dinner parties and then somebody's moaning about, depending where we are, the local school, and they turn to me to ask about it, and I always say, well, in my village there's probably another dinner party going on and people are moaning about me. Oh, no. That's, you're fair game. You're a public figure, and it is, I think in the early days that was tough. Now, again, broad shoulders, it doesn't really bother me so much, but it does, people only see a certain side to you. So that's quite tough. In terms of the everyday job, well, the list is as long as your arm. There's always challenges. The way I look at things is that, you know, we take a very pragmatic view about it. If it's not statutory, we don't necessarily do it. You know, we will always look at staff, you know, take each challenge and look at it and think about it for your school, and that makes it manageable, if that makes sense, rather than just getting weighed down by everything. You know, if I actually thought about everything I had to do, I'd probably go under. So that's why I'm not a list maker, and I don't do that, because I think I'd just dissolve.
And that's really
Can you give some examples? I mean, I'm going to read you something that I tweeted out. It was either yesterday or the day before. This was a message to me. I've started at a new school. We have to have every page marked every 5 days, including tick and flick. We have to mark in 2 coloured pens, and also have homework and assessments to mark. We also have a requirement for 3 or 4 different levels of differentiation for each task in each lesson. So that was one of many messages that I get that are kind of on a similar line, which saddens me and frustrates me. But what have you stripped away, and what are you doing to basically make those teachers' lives easier here, as opposed to what we've just heard?
I think the easy answer is none of that. We've taken away all of that. We've taken away the majority of marking, so the key things that has to be marked, because that's a massive thing. We've centralised the whole behaviour systems. We've done away with written reports.
Data-related targets.
Data-related targets.
Observations.
No observations either.
No. What does genuine, authentic teacher well-being mean or look like to you?
I think it's if teachers come to work and they're happy to come to work and energised and positive and stepping into that classroom, they've got a passion for what they want to do. And that comes from removing all the nonsense that teachers have been asked to do over the years, so that they just come in as happy people and just teach. And they don't have to worry about all the other bits that go on, because that's taken care of by other people or by the senior leadership team. And they just focus on that. And they work hard. And as a teachers, when they come, we expect them to work hard. But then we also expect evenings and weekends and holidays to just switch off totally, and we encourage that in all our staff, that is your time. That is your time with your friends, that's your time with your family, that's your time with your holiday. But well-being for staff is removing all the nonsense that you have of having to fill in reports and loads of data and loads of marking and ticking boxes and all that. So just planning lessons, or filling in lesson plans. Plan your lessons, don't fill in a lesson plan. Marking. It's just come in and teach, done the job, and go home and switch off. I think that's the best thing we can do. And removing the pressures of an accountability system and never putting any of those pressures on teachers. As leaders, we will feel the pressure because that's our role, and but our job is to protect teachers, that we don't need to talk about anything external in the school. We just need you to just passionate about your subject and teach your subject to students.
I think our job as leaders is to remove the shackles that have held teachers down and to let those teachers teach. It's emancipating staff. But when you talk about well-being, what is true well-being? I think true well-being is where your job does not impact on your home life negatively. That's true well-being. So when you're coming to work and you're going home and all you're talking about is positive stuff that's happened during the day, where if you're miserable at home because of work, then that's the well-being's all wrong. And so for us as leaders, we want to ensure that all of our colleagues go home and that they have a great time at home. They can switch off. Because for many years, I've talked to loads of people where they just cannot switch off from work. And that will impact your well-being sooner or later.
The organisation has got to be asking people to do important things that matter. And too many organisations ask people to do things which don't matter. It wouldn't matter in a month of Sundays if it never happened. And so the first thing is you've got to sit within a culture where somebody's actually looking at the whole and saying, what do we expect? And then that kind of starts into plans. So the idea that, right, we're going to look at this year. This is also important, but we've decided that we can't look at it till 2021. And this is 2022. And I just wish I'd started 5 years ago, but I didn't, so I am where I am. So managing that. And then looking and saying, so where's the time? So we have 7 inset days a year. At one point we had 9 when we had the kind of massive curriculum development going on both at the primary and secondary level. At a secondary school, and this has been for 15, 16 years now, it goes back to early headship. Thursday afternoon we always finish half an hour early and we have 2 hours of CPD. We've not always used it well, but we're getting better and better at using it well. A lot of it given over to departments to actually work on things like collaborative planning and to look at kind of what is the kind of the data that they're getting out of the classroom, which is saying what is being taught well because people understand it and what's not. And so I think there's a whole thing there that is structural and organisational. And then actually the wellbeing issue is very, very different. And it changes from teacher to teacher. And it changes over a teacher's career.
Yeah.
So if you're young and single, you might be looking and quite happy to take trips or go on residentials. That actually becomes harder when you have a family, or it becomes harder if your parents are not well, or whatever. So as other commitments, and so teachers' kind of well-being kind of flows and changes. And I know there's things like part-time work that people would want in terms of well-being. Putting aside the argument, could we find the teachers to replace them? Actually, there's some teachers who can't afford to go part-time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's just something I think which is about some real solid structural stuff that a school must do to set a context and a culture. And then I think there's something about responding to the needs of different people at different times. And that's probably somewhere in that mix that we find it.
Do you feel there's a limit within the current system to what you can do as a leader to create authentic teacher wellbeing, or do you feel you're getting there, and do you feel or do you think it's a commonality that it's not impossible but it's incredibly difficult?
I think it's not impossible, and there is, I would say, the earlier in your career you are as a leader and the more disadvantaged the area you work in, the more difficult it is to manage it. But did I get braver the older I got and the closer to retirement? Yes. I'd prefer to risk things at a level, and that shouldn't undermine the person who's early in the career with a massive mortgage, a family to support and all the rest. You just think, I can't risk not doing this or not doing that.